Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're breaking down a military operation that was just as much about symbolism as it was about strategy. We're talking about India's 2025 counter-terrorist strike, Operation Sindoor. We're going to look at the red line that was crossed, the incredibly coordinated response, and the strategic tightrope it walked between powerful retribution and all-out war. That's the big question here. And Operation Sindoor is a really fascinating case study in exactly that. It's this incredible collision of raw national grief, deep cultural symbolism, and some very cold, very hard strategic calculation. So, May 7th. That's the date to remember. But to really understand why India acted on that day, we have to rewind about 2 weeks to an attack that absolutely horrified the nation. Our story doesn't begin with the retaliation. No, it starts with the provocation. A brutal terror attack in Pahalgam, in Jammu and Kashmir, that was immediately seen as something different, a profound and totally unacceptable escalation. 26. That's the number of civilians who lost their lives. But the national outcry wasn't just about the scale of the tragedy, it was about the chillingly deliberate nature of the attack. Yeah, see, this wasn't just another security incident. It was viewed as something far more sinister. The attackers went after civilians, reportedly singling them out by their religion. And among the victims were newly married couples, which turned what could have been just a national security issue into a deeply personal national tragedy. For India's leadership, this was it. This was the crossing of a red line. You can see the direct link right here. Attack on April 22nd, response on May 7th. That 15-day gap. You can just imagine it was a period of intense national debate and some serious strategic planning, all of it leading to one single, decisive action. So, how did India respond? Well, the answer came in the form of a military operation with a deeply symbolic name, one that was directly tied to the victims of the attack itself, Operation Sindoor. And let's be super clear here. This wasn't some spontaneous border skirmish. This was a formally named, meticulously planned operation with a very clear objective: dismantle terrorist infrastructure. But to really get this operation, you have to understand the name. To really grasp the power of that name, you have to understand the cultural meaning of Sindoor. It's a vermilion powder, and it's worn by married Hindu women. It's a sacred symbol of their marital status and their husband's life. And this is where the symbolism becomes just incredibly poignant. The name was a direct tribute to the widows of Pahalgam, many of whom had just begun their married lives. It transformed military strike into an act of justice, framed specifically around their personal loss. So, putting the symbolism aside for a moment, how was this operation actually carried out? This wasn't a simple border raid. It was a complex, multifaceted, and highly coordinated strike. The whole strategy really rested on 4 key pillars. First, it was a tri-service operation. That means the Army, Air Force, and Navy all worked together in concert, which is a really complex feat of military choreography. They struck in the dead of night, around 1 a.m., to guarantee total surprise. Their target wasn't just one location, but 9 distinct sites, all hit at the same time. And the entire operation was defined by one principle: surgical precision. And that precision, that was the critical element. The goal was to hit terrorist launch pads and infrastructure, and only those targets. They meticulously avoided civilian areas, and most importantly, they avoided Pakistani military installations. This was the strategic masterstroke, sending a powerful message of capability and resolve, while very carefully avoiding a provocation that could lead to a full-scale war. But the impact of this operation went way beyond the battlefield. The government framed it with this powerful symbolism that connected the cold military facts of the strike right back to the very human tragedy that started it all. This quote captures the national mood perfectly, doesn't it? For many, especially the victims' families, this wasn't just some state-led military action. The narrative consistently linked this national response back to individual grief, framing it as a necessary tribute to those who had lost everything. So, once the dust settled, what was the verdict from military and strategic analysts? How did they judge the operation's success after the fact? Well, the commentary from a strategic perspective was broadly positive. Analysts pointed out it was India's largest anti-terror strike inside Pakistan since the 1971 war. It earned a lot of praise for its tri-service coordination and its precision. But the highest praise was reserved for this one key achievement. It hit its targets hard without dragging the 2 nuclear-armed nations into a wider war. And this brings us to the central paradox of Operation Sindoor, and really, its lasting legacy. How can a military strike be both an act of fierce retribution and a calculated tool of de-escalation? That duality is exactly what makes this operation such a vital case study, with a central question that strategists everywhere are still debating.